haven't made a video in a while. I've had some unexpected delays. Permit took a little, permits. We had two of them. One to take down the shed, demolition permit, and the other to build the power shed. Took a little longer than expected. Everybody blames pandemic for those types of things, so I guess that's the deal. And we've run into some hitches with the insects. Didn't think that the black flies would be so bad. A period of about 2 weeks. They're just clouds. Take a deep breath and you're breathing in 3 or 4 of them. That prevented outside work. Made up for it by building the wiring harness block for the generator. And the other problem is I've had 4 ticks on people in the last week. So thankfully none of the ticks that we spotted had started to embed themselves. Lyme disease is no joke, so bug spray. And the bugs aren't so bad now, so I'm able to get to work. Well, another reason why things are slow. There's a sheer amount of trash on the property. I guess with rural properties, a lot of folks just find a spot in the backwoods to dump stuff, which is a bummer because I'm not a fan of it. I want to be able to walk the property and not see that. So we pulled old sheets of tin out of the ground, chunks of concrete. Part of that's the block wall that's coming in the midst of being knocked down. So I'm going to arrange to get a probably 20, maybe 25 yard bin, park it right here, and chop this up with the Sawzall and throw all this stuff in the bin, have a cleaner property. So we weren't really anticipating spending a ton of time on that, but we will make sure that it correlates with this getting knocked down, because a lot of this is going to go into the bin as well. One of the reasons I'm getting rid of this old shed is in this chipboard beaver puke build is it's just rotten. I could probably kick a hole in it, but I'm going to reuse what I can, timbers in the roof and the tin on the roof for the power shed. So another noteworthy update is we got the propane installed, the 420 pound tank, and it was always a bit of a conundrum for me to like, how are we going to get propane to the power shed, which is there across all that rock. I was wondering whether we could run a line back through the woods or whatever, kind of parallel to where the electrical line is going to run, but according to code, it's got to be buried, minimum of 18 inches, so I would have to chip up the rock. Anyway, way too much work. We like the look of it, so I don't want to do that. So in speaking with the propane company, it's really not a lot more expensive to rent a second one of these tanks and put it next to the power shed, which it isn't really something I considered at first, but it makes a pile of sense. A little prep work done. And by prep, I mean mowing the lawn. You can now kind of get at her. And the price of lumber, picked this up at an abandoned job site. And I mean abandoned, like I'd be the last person to wander onto a construction site and start taking stuff that I think is abandoned. But we're talking tall grass, like trash strewn about, and as you can see, this has concrete residue on it, so it was used previously for concrete forming, which is exactly what I needed for. If I were to buy this plywood, well, this looks like it's 24 by 96, so that's 2 sheets 3/4 inch plywood at $66 each. Well, I just saved myself a pretty decent chunk of money, and I can just burn it after in a burn barrel. So yeah, so that's great. 8 feet by 8 feet is exactly the dimensions of the slab I'm going to pour. So this is a bonus. it is, it's official. Permits up, displayed as per the municipal rules, so that all the neighbors that I don't even have can come check it out. So next up on the list is power shed right there, 8 by 8, and it's going to be kind of parallel to the sea container with about 24 inches away, maybe 30, enough of a little breezeway to walk through. Oh, it's not easy work. Quite a tangled mess of roots as well, but you know, the silver lining is that we're not dealing with clay or some kind of substrate that doesn't drain properly. This is some pretty fine soil mixed with rock. So you see some of the boulders pulled out there, but it should make for a long-lasting slab once poured. So the battery died, ending my sort of time-lapse thing that I started, but I think these videos are boring enough as it is without seeing me dig holes. This is the gist. There's a pile of big rocks coming out, which is why I needed the pickaxe. Alright, so digging is virtually done. I spared my small audience the boringness of many monotonous hours of digging. Also noticed I have a couple of subscribers. Well, I raise a lukewarm but refreshing cup of water to you. We're getting through this. Anyway, the form is pretty much in place. Have to make sure that all 4 sides are perfectly level. And I'm going to be driving rebar in the center so that there's no flex once I pour in the gravel and then the cement. So got a Titanic rock there. It's not coming out. You can see I've pulled out a couple boulders well over 100 pounds, but that guy is he's not coming out. So that's okay. I don't foresee there being a whole heck of a lot of frost heave, and if there is, it'll be a bit of gravel on top of it, and I'm not too concerned. We have a nice slope here, so water runoff will be perfectly okay. So just some fine tuning and making sure she's perfectly square, and how I do that is measure that corner to that corner. That measurement should be exactly the same as this corner to that corner. So that's what I'm going to do next. So thought has to go into removing your form once your concrete has cured. So in this particular case, I've secured all 4 corners of the form with some scrap 2x4. Remember, the pallets come in handy yet again, with 2 screws on the end. So once this has concrete and it's cured, I can undo these 2 screws on all 4 ends, and the 2x4s will come off in pieces attached to the forming plywood, and that will just come straight off. So you can see that for the most part plywood is straight. I'm still going to make sure that in the center there's some reinforcement there, because it'll have a tendency to bow with the weight of all the cement. It's pretty heavy stuff. So at this point, I've got just shy of 142 inches, about 141 7/8. 141 7/8. That's great. So I now know mathematically that this is about as square as it gets. And you know, even if it were off an eighth, a half, or even 3/4 of an inch, it's not going to be noticeable to the eye upon it being complete. Oh, looks like I need a new tape measure. So the other thing I have to bear in mind is once I fill this with gravel, just before then, I'm going to have to run conduits, because the plan is I'm going to have electrical coming in and out of here. I'm going to have a propane feed coming in here. I'm going to have electrical going out into the sea can. So I've got all that sketched out on paper, but I'll have to turn it into a reality before I start putting too much gravel down. So if we go along and have a look, you can see that the form is by and large pretty darn level, and the reason that we do this is to make the cement pouring and troweling nice and easy. So we'll take a large piece of wood and we'll just drag it right across like that, and if we go from one side to the other with a straight edge, should be touching concrete all the way through. So that's gonna make for a level pad once the cement is all cured up. The other thing I'm considering here as I cut and measure this stuff is that there's going to be 3.5 inches worth of framing, and I want the conduit to be reasonably close to the wall, so that the cables come down and they just go right into the conduit. And I also have two sizes of conduit. I got 3/4 inch and 1/2 inch, depending on what it is that I'm going to be putting through it, obviously to remain in budget. And I'm going to turn this on the angle that I'm looking for, plus obviously I want the conduit on the other side to be sticking straight up. That looks pretty darn good. And this conduit is good for use indoors, outdoors, buried, above ground. It's got UV resistant properties, and it's actually fairly reasonable value. And it's nice, it just cuts with a regular wood saw. Be careful not to get dirt in there. There we do, that ought to do it. And that's what we have left there. I'll continue the run. It'll go on a slight rise, and 2 more 90 elbows. And so it also just occurred to me that I should point out that there's a method to, do you see how these things fit? Straight piece fits inside the flared piece. And there's a reason for that I'm doing it this way, because these pipes are going to be climbing a hill. And I'd rather they go downhill with the flange like that, so it'll keep water out of the system. Even though they're being glued together, it's Just a small detail that I think is worthwhile. All right, so just a quick tour before the next step there. Decided to dig a little channel here. There are three things that we're going to access the C-can from the power shed. One was a ground wire, which I decided, it's a ground wire. It doesn't need a conduit, so I'm just kind of going to pour right over it, and I'll wire it up. That's down the road. That's after power shed. And then we have a 120 volt cable that's going to provide light and power in the C container, and we have the larger 3/4 inch conduit, which is going to be attached to the string combiner. The string combiner is a small box that I'm going to have 2 solar arrays. The string combiner will combine them both, combine that voltage, which will then go to the charge controller. So carrying on here, that's obviously you can tell where the electrical is going to be inside the power shed, obviously in this area. So next step is to cover this whole thing with gravel, and I'm going to fine tune exactly where I have these conduits once the gravel's in. And just a quick look at what's going on back here. Right here, I'll put 2 90-degree bends, and those will extend off into the forest unseen, but providing power to the cabin. And the other one's got a control wire, which will be attached to a monitoring station of sorts that we can program and set and parameters and all that sort of thing, and of course monitor the health of the system and how much charge is in the batteries, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, on to next steps here. One more thing. You'll notice that I've taped the top of these. It might seem really obvious, but I don't want critters getting in them. I don't want water getting in the conduit, and of course when I pour all the gravel in here, I don't want any gravel getting in there, or cement for that matter. Okay, so I don't quite have enough gravel, but I'm not going to make the video any longer by showing more gravel being dumped. But this is what it looks like now. Should be another 2 inches. My plan was to have a 6-inch slab. We're kind of at like 7 or 8 at this point, so need another maybe half yard of gravel. So got these kind of where I want them, and yeah, from there we'll be ready to call the camion de béton. And once we have a slab, oh boy, we can really get building.